Hello, this is John, and I've got some good news, some better news, and some great news. The good news is last night I was making a video and my computer completely froze up and crashed, and the tower itself started making this loud beeping noise. And I had to unplug the speakers and the headphones from it, and that stopped it, but it still would not boot up when I tried to boot it up. It was a 12-year-old computer that I bought used then, and it ran on Windows 7. So here we are now and I'm on a new computer. It's a better computer. It runs so much faster and it's so much easier for me to work on. But I've got to log into all the stuff that I was logged into before. Also, I need to download an HTML editor. So anyway, I'm up and running and I can make videos again. Better news is Parler is back up online, but they're not completely operational yet. As he put out this message today, you can go to parler.com and everybody will get this. Now seems like the right time to remind you all, both lovers and haters, why we started this platform. We believe privacy is paramount and free speech essential, especially on social media. Our aim has always been to provide a nonpartisan public square where individuals can enjoy and exercise their rights to both. We will resolve any challenge before us and plan to welcome all of you back soon. We will not let civil discourse perish. Okay, so Parler is going to be coming back online very soon, which will be great. Now here is some really great news. So yesterday my computer crashed. I had another computer that I bought like 4 or 5 months ago on standby, but because of all the login to all the other stuff that I would have to go through, I kept postponing hooking it up because my other computer was running okay, and I didn't want to have to go through the hassle of re-hooking up to all the different platforms that I use. And also I had a bunch of files on my old computer that I wanted to save. Some of them I actually transferred to the USB thing that you can plug in, but I didn't get them all in there before the computer crashed. I wish I would have done more earlier. So anyway, I hooked the new computer up, got online, couldn't really do anything. I decided I would sign up and find all my sign-ins and passwords and everything and get back on all my platforms the next day. And so many of you have heard me talking about Agenda 21, Agenda 30, 2030, and these headphones, matter of fact, my son gave me, and before on my other computer, I use this right here, and I'll probably use it again in the future, but this thing picks up every sound. You need a soundproof room to use this thing. It's high quality microphone, but the microphone I'm using now, which is built into the headset, I've never used one of these before, and it's fairly clear. So I'm going to probably use this because this way I don't have to have everybody in the house be quiet, and this doesn't pick up every single sound. So I was working on a video last night that shows how science proves that life begins at conception. And with Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, it's a lot about population control, population reduction, and it's a lot about worshiping the creation rather than the creator. So the first thing that happened when I got my new computer hooked up and I jumped online and I went to Facebook, logged in, and went to check out some videos that were up, and this was the first video that popped up. This guy here, this young man right here, I'm going to play because it's amazing how God works. He leads you in directions and introduces you to people that it is good for you to know. So I'm going to play 30 seconds of this video, and then I'm going to mirror the entire video because this guy is spot on to everything he is talking about in regards to the deep state, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and the brainwashing of our children. And this has been going on for a long time. I'm going to upload a video later where this guy went to Yale, and within an hour, he had 50 signatures from Yale college students signing a petition to get rid of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. But listen to what this guy says in the first 30 seconds.
That little new world order that the globalists always tell you about that they're currently building.
A new world order.
A new world order.
The international order.
A new world order.
The way they're going to do it is by brainwashing your children. And don't trust me about it. Don't take my word for it. We're going to show you the proof right now.
So this is a guy you're definitely going to want to subscribe to, because I've checked out his page over on YouTube today and also here on Facebook. Links to both of those will be the first links down in my description on this video, as I mirror this video that he put up, so you can listen to what he says. So that's what's going to play on for the rest of this video. Seek the truth daily, my friends, and the truth will find you seeking. God will direct you where you need to go. And I would like to remind you of what Peter taught us in regards to God, our Heavenly Father. He said, 1,000 years unto man is but a day unto the Lord. Remember that, because when you're the almighty, powerful Heavenly Father who lives forever and ever, 1,000 years is like unto a day. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Alex Newman, Behind the Deep State, from his Facebook channel, The New American Magazine, and you'll find him also on YouTube, The New American Magazine.
That little new world order that the globalists always tell you about that they're currently building.
A new world order.
A new world order.
The international order.
A new world order.
The way they're going to do it is by brainwashing your children. And don't trust me about it. Don't take my word for it. We're going to show you the proof right now. So the globalists have actually told us on numerous occasions how they plan to bring about the changes that they're going to need to build that little new world order they're always blabbering about. And don't take my word for it. Check this out. I mean, you got Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. These are both good examples of what we're talking about. And, you know, I know if you listen to CNN, the fake news kings, they're going to say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. There's no such thing as Agenda 21. Of course, there is actually. Or they'll say, oh, it's a non-binding voluntary thing. In fact, it is not a conspiracy theory. It is a fact. Now, watch George H.W. Bush talk about it.
We've signed a climate convention on the importance of economic instruments and free markets. We're included in this mammoth Agenda 21 document and the Rio Declaration. Let me be clear on one fundamental point. The United States fully intends to be the world's preeminent leader in protecting the global environment.
And unfortunately, this is not just a Republican establishment problem. This is also a Democrat problem. Watch the leader of the Communist Party in Congress talking about Agenda 21. Check this out.
H.Con. Res. 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21 to be coordinated under the leadership of a specific office and at the direction of a high-level government official.
Okay, so in the Earth Summit strategy to save our planet, the architects of this abomination called Agenda 21, they actually tell you what it is. They say it's an array of actions intended to be implemented by every person on the planet. That means you and your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids and everybody else on this miserable planet. They say that effective execution of Agenda 21 is going to require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. So they got big plans, right? And you know, they like to call us the bitter clingers. You guys remember when Obama called us bitter clingers?
Well, it's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or a way to explain their frustrations.
Bitter clingers, because you cling to your guns and your Bibles, right? And they know Americans are bitter clingers, and so are a lot of other people. You know, those Riley Swiss people, they're bitter clingers too, clinging to their guns and their Bibles. What are we going to do about them? Well, Speaking of Agenda 21, you go to chapter 36 of Agenda 21, and you can find this monstrosity right on the UN's website. They'll tell you education is, quote, in chapter 36, totally deals with education. Education is critical for promoting sustainable development. Now, we've done episodes on sustainable development. This is an ideology from hell. Basically, no more individual liberty, no more private property, no more, nation states, right? Sustainable development is basically the nice little label they slapped on their totalitarian globalist ideology. And so when they talk about education being critical for promoting sustainable development, yeah, it's going to be critical. You're going to have to persuade a lot of people who otherwise, if they were thinking straight, would never go for this. Then they tell you also in chapter 36, brainwashing is going to be indispensable to changing people's attitudes. They go on to say it is also critical for achieving environmental and ethical awareness, values and attitudes and skills that are consistent with sustainable development. It should include spiritual development. It should be integrated into all disciplines. Okay, this is them speaking. This is a document that was approved by every government on planet Earth in 1992. You heard Bush and Pelosi talking about it. See, they always agree on this crazy stuff. And I actually have. This is a book produced by the United Nations. It's called Rescue Mission Planet Earth, a children's edition of Agenda 21. Okay, a good friend of mine gave me this. It's got an introduction by Boutros Ghali, the Secretary General of the United Nations at the time. And you really should see this. You got to see it to believe it. Let me give you a couple examples here. On this page right here, I think you can see you got a bunch of like Hindu gods. They're floating up in the clouds with a bunch of arms, a half-naked woman. And you can see the storks are delivering all these babies. And the Hindu gods are like, hey, what's going on with all these babies, right? It's terrible. Well, flip the page. You can see right here, it tells you that the planet groans every time it registers another birth. Okay? The planet groans every time it registers another birth. Are you getting this? Right? What does God say about babies? What does God say about child rearing? It says children are a blessing. It says you should be fruitful and you should multiply. And so what does the UN teach your children? That the earth is groaning every time another baby comes. Okay, this is the crazy ideology they're teaching your children. And so, as I travel across the country, around the world, I hear constantly from older Americans, oh, my kids, I sent them to public school and now they don't want to have kids, climate crisis, they don't want to have any babies, I don't get any grandchildren. This is the kind of garbage they're teaching to your children. That's why you won't get grandchildren, right? Because they are teaching evil stuff to your children. Now, I went down to the UN Conference on Sustainable Development in 2012. We saw these pictures. They had conscripted a bunch of kids to do this, and man, these kids are brainwashed. You see the planet Earth there, and then you see the doctor diagnoses the problem. The Earth is all sick. He's got the thermometer. It looks sad. And the doctor says, I know your problem. You have humans. Okay, humans, you are the disease. But fortunately, the UN is going to take care of that disease for us. Okay. Think about Agenda 2030. We did a whole episode on Agenda 2030, and we talked about some of this. So some of this will be a review if you're a regular viewer of this program. But in Agenda 2030, again, you can find this on the UN's website. This was adopted by every government on planet Earth. They tell you that children are critical agents of change. Okay, did you know your children were critical agents of change? And they say that they will find in the new goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, a platform to channel their infinite capacities for activism into the creation of a better new world order totalitarianism. Now, it actually says a better world. And, we all want a better world, right? Who doesn't want a better world? But that is just window dressing for their real agenda. Okay, and goal number 10, they tell you we need international socialism. They say we have to reduce inequality within and among countries. To do that is only going to be possible if the wealth is shared and income inequality is addressed. Does that sound like Fidel Castro? Does that sound like Robert Mugabe? Does that sound like Kim Jong-un? Does that sound like Chairman Mao and Stalin and Lenin and Adolf Hitler and all the rest of the lunatics? Although, it's true, Adolf Hitler was a national socialist. These are international socialists. They say the governments are going to make fundamental changes to the way our societies produce and consume goods and services and blah, 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 blah. And then you get to goal number 4 in Agenda 2030. Again, this was signed by every single government on planet Earth. Obama signed it on behalf of the United States. And it says by 2030, we need to ensure that all learners, that's your kids, all learners will have the knowledge and skills needed, not just to passively submit to sustainable development, to be quiet and meekly accept it. They need to promote sustainable development. That's how brainwashed they are going to have to be. Okay. And if you wonder, they told you this is the blueprint for the global system they're building. They tell you over and over and over again, and no one will be left behind. Every last human being on this planet. Ban Ki-moon said it was the Global Declaration of Interdependence. The head of the UN General Assembly at the time, Peter Thompson, he said it's a master plan for humanity. Okay. And I want you guys to watch this video real quick because the UN is bragging about the fact that they're going to brainwash your children to create a sustainable development guided new world order. Check out this video from UNESCO.
Can we achieve sustainable development that protects our planet and builds a more inclusive, equal, and peaceful world without education? We can't. Sustainable development begins with education. Put global education first.
And so a big part of this is, of course, brainwashing your children to believe that we're all going to die from global warming. Okay, so check out this video that the UN produced.
For all our differences and diversity, the world can agree on one thing. Education is at the heart of a sustainable future for us all. In 2015, voices from all sectors of society and all corners of the globe contributed to one of the greatest collaborations in history, an ambitious plan for people, planet and prosperity. A plan to wipe out poverty by 2030 and pave the way to an inclusive and sustainable future. A plan to build on human rights with education at its very core. Education is not only a basic right for every woman, man and child. It forms the foundation for every kind of human right, making it key to the success of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030.
They talk about we're going to use education to stop climate change. Frankly, that's ludicrous, right? About 1,000 years ago, was getting colder and colder and colder and colder because it was really warm 1,000 years ago. It started getting colder. You had Vikings living on Greenland. They were farming, and you can't farm on Greenland anymore, of course, because it's too cold. But back when it was warmer 1,000 years ago, you could farm there. And then as it started getting colder, like, oh my goodness, climate change. And so pagans, heathens, started sacrificing children to the climate gods. Maybe they'll stop the global climate change. And of course, the climate didn't stop changing. I submit to you that brainwashing your children to stop climate change will probably be about as effective as sacrificing your children for climate change. Now, if you want to see what this looks like in an American classroom, check out this video.
You've heard the reports. The globe's warming. It's our fault, and the consequences will be terrible.
Children are frightened.
I worry. My mom worries. The water might rise and it might flood the whole town.
We won't be able to survive for long.
What are you most worried will happen?
We'll all die.
Are there some people who say this isn't true?
Yes. Yes.
Might they be right?
No.
How do you know they're not right?
Well, because the earth is getting hotter.
Where do you learn this?
Can't you see? Oh, can't you see? What global warming is doing? Can't you see? Oh, can't you see? What global warming is doing to me?
One of the main components after educating the students of global warming is that they're given a letter for their families to sign.
So UNESCO now, the UN Education and Cultural and Scientific Organization, they've now got global standards for everything, right? They've got global standards for reading. They say children should be able to learn a sight vocabulary. Now, if you've watched some of our other videos, you know that learning a sight vocabulary is quackery of the highest order. My good friend and late colleague, Dr. Samuel Blumenfeld, with whom I wrote the book Crimes of the Educators, he called the sight words the thalidomide of the brain, right? That drug that was making women have babies with no arms, no legs, or the short ones. This is basically poison for the mind. It will result in handicapping children. So it's no surprise that UNESCO wants to teach children that. They've also got global sex education standards, where they want to start teaching 5-year-olds about sexual pleasure, right? Crazy stuff. We talked a little bit about that in a recent episode. They want 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds to be able to defend safe and legal abortion. And then they say, oh, this is all science-backed, right? And you go to the back, like, who's their science? Oh, Planned Parenthood, listed more than 20 times, okay? So the UNESCO's got global sex education standards that are perverted beyond the wildest stuff you could imagine. And you know what? The UN has been pretty honest and transparent about the fact that they want to brainwash your kids for a long time now. Okay, back in the 1940s, after World War II, they came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it properly should have been called the Universal Declaration of Anti-Human Rights, because there are no human rights listed in there. In fact, it's anti-rights. These are privileges that the UN says are granted by governments and international agreements that can be revoked at any time. But if you read through this, go to Article 26, for example, they say that education shall be compulsory, right? Your brainwashing is mandatory by the government. They tell you that education, quote, shall further the activities of the United Nations. So if your child is receiving an education that doesn't brainwash them to love and worship the United Nations, then you are depriving them of their pseudo-human right to an education that furthers the activities of the United Nations. And that's what they said in the 1940s, okay? Also in the 1940s, they set up UNESCO, the UN Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. This was founded by their own admission to promote humanism, socialism, and globalism. The first Secretary General, Julian Huxley, said political unification in some sort of world government was the goal. They put out a series of pamphlets in 1949. They said schools must be used to combat family attitudes. Okay, in 1990, they got governments from all over the world together in Jomtien in Thailand, and they came up with the first ever World Conference on Education for All, and they agreed to this Education for All agreement. In Article 5, they say children must be subjected to, quote, the same standards of learning, right? Every child in the world needs to have the same standards of learning. You go to Article 10. Basic learning needs and basic learning content required by all human beings is a common and universal responsibility. Okay, what they mean by that is that the United Nations, right, a common and universal, will be the ones deciding what is the basic learning content that your children need. Okay, in 2000, they brought all the governments of the world together in Dakar in Senegal. Came up with another Education for All agreement. They said governments must implement integrated strategies which recognize the need for changes in attitudes, values, and practices. Remember what I was telling you? They need some serious attitude changing. They say also in the same agreement, changes in attitudes, values, and behavior are required. Okay? Now watch this video of the Secretary General of the UN at the time. This is in 2015, talking about what is the purpose of an education.
Education must do more than produce individuals who can read, write, and count. It must nurture global citizens who can rise to the challenges of the 21st century.
The purpose of an education, as you see, is to create good little global citizens who will bow to their global masters. In 2016, the UN created a Global Education Action Plan. This was developed in Korea in 2016, and they said that education must promote, quote, the integrated development of the whole person, including the formation of their ethics, values, and spirituality. They said education must advance the cause of global citizenship. Children must understand their responsibility to protect the planet, and they've got to promote the UN's vision of the common good. Now, if you listen, these people will tell you this over and over again. The head of UNESCO, Irina Bokova, back when this was drafted, she hates me with such a passion, by the way. She's a member of the Bulgarian Communist Party, faithfully served the mass-murdering dictatorship there that slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people. Her dad was actually on the Politburo of the Bulgarian regime. And she says in a press release that was sent out to everybody on their mailing list, we have the collective duty to empower every child with the right values to shape the future as responsible global citizens. Okay? That's them telling you, not me. If you go to UNESCO's website, you'll see the UN Education for Sustainable Development Toolkit. And in this toolkit, they tell you that generally more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. Okay? Are you getting this? More education for your children increases the threat to their sustainable world order. UNESCO also produced a board game for children for use in with 8 to 10-year-old children, and the kids have to get the questions right before they can move to the next box. One of the questions, just to give you a sample, what is the best way to fight poverty? Okay, now if you have two brain cells to rub together, you look around the world, you say, which are the countries with the least amount of poverty? Well, we got America, we got Switzerland, we've got Luxembourg, we've got Liechtenstein, we've got Japan. What do they all have in common? Oh yeah, free markets and private property and at least some tenuous relationship to biblical principles. Well, what does the UN say is the correct answer for your little children? The correct answer is, quote, share the wealth produced in the world. So global Marxism is the best way to fight global poverty. And if you don't believe me, go to Cuba or North Korea or Venezuela, where they're eating their pets, and you'll see how well that strategy works for fighting poverty. Now check out this video again of the UN bragging about what they're doing.
The Education 2030 Agenda is our roadmap to inclusive and quality education for all. UNESCO, the UN's specialized agency for education, is leading the global and regional coordination of this ambitious goal, responding to cutting-edge global challenges, supporting countries to build better education systems, and monitoring progress to make sure the world stays on course.
We're going to make sure the world stays on course. The UN is going to make sure the world stays on course. And with the British accent, I mean, how could you possibly resist, right? They sound so smart and so nice. Well, but that doesn't apply to America anyways. They're not going to help us develop a better education system that lines up with it. Actually, yes, they are. And don't believe me. Obama's education secretary, Arne Duncan, spent 7 years mishandling the U.S. Department of Education. He gave a speech to UNESCO in 2010 or 2012, I believe, still posted on the U.S. Department of Education's website. He said UNESCO was his global partner in creating green global citizens. He quoted a communist terrorist, said education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. He said education is a global public good, unconstrained by national boundaries. He also said that we must advance the sustainability movement through education. He bragged that the U.S. government was working to build the science of sustainability into the curriculum, starting in kindergarten and extending until the students graduate from high school. Okay, are you starting to get this? And now, that brings me to Common Core, our last and final point before we go here. You know, we all know about Common Core, and we're going to talk about the Common Core more in detail. It is an absolute atrocity. I mean, it's designed to dumb down your children. Don't take my word for it. I'll tell you about some of the people who the Common Core people selected who said the same thing. But, you know, a lot of people think Common Core is just the nationalization of education, and that's not the case. In fact, the Common Core is the globalization of education by the deep state. Now, if you go to UNESCO's website, you'll find something that they call the World Core Curriculum. And you're thinking, that sounds a lot like Common Core. Good one. Bright viewers out there, right? So, yeah, the name resemblance is not difficult to detect, and it's more than coincidental. It was created by this World Core Curriculum was created by a guy called Robert Mueller. He was the Assistant UN Secretary General, and he basically said, you know, I got an education in France and Germany. It was terrible. It was nationalistic. We should have a global education system. So he's called the father of global education. In a letter to all the educators of the world, he said the World Core Curriculum is the product of the United Nations, the meta-organism of human and planetary evolution. He said that this is a curriculum of our universal knowledge. It should be taught in all the schools of the earth, right? It's like Common Core, but for the whole wide world. Now, he also created a teacher's manual for this World Core Curriculum. And in the foreword to the teacher's manual, he reveals something incredibly important. He says that the underlying philosophy upon which this is all based is found in the teachings set forth in the books of Alice Bailey by the Tibetan teacher Jwal Khul. And you're like, yeah, that means nothing to me because I don't know who Alice Bailey is. Well, I'll give you a hint. Okay, she was a very important lady, and all the leadership of the United Nations knows exactly who she is. And you know, this will probably tell you a lot about her. She was the founder of the Lucifer Publishing Company. And I mean, you know, who doesn't like Lucifer Publishing Company, right? Anyways, crazy stuff. And you're thinking, that's crazy. Yes, it is crazy. Why in the world is the World Core Curriculum based on the philosophy of the lady who founded the Lucifer Publishing Company? They finally changed the name. Now it's the Lucis Trust, because that's not quite as insane. And then this Tibetan teacher he talks about, turns out he's not Tibetan, he's not a teacher, and he's not even a human being. Alice Bailey claimed she was in communication with these ascended masters, right? These spiritual entities that she said would take over her body. And you're probably thinking, this is absolutely bonkers, Alex. What in the world are you talking about? You're right. This is absolutely bonkers. It's totally crazy, but it's not me saying this. This is them. Okay, so they're the crazy ones, not me. I'm just telling you what they say. Okay, so this Tibetan teacher, Jwal Khul, would take control of Alice Bailey's body. That's what she said. You know, if you read your Bible, it's obvious we're talking about demons here. But they would take over her body, and they would write these books. One of the books they wrote is Education in the New Age by Alice Bailey. And this will give you a hint about where they're going with this educational system. The demons, writing through Alice Bailey in this book, they say world citizenship should be the goal of the enlightened, with a world federation and a world brain. Our problem is to attain the kind of overall synthesis that Marxism, yes, Marxism, and neo-scholasticism provide for their followers, but to get this by the freely chosen cooperative methods that John Dewey advocated. Now, if you don't remember John Dewey, go back a couple episodes where we talked about public schools being created to collectivize society. The guy was a communist. The guy was a humanist. He rejected God, and of course that led him into Never Never Land. Now, in 2015, UNESCO was bragging in its Education for All report that these global targets were being implemented at the national level all over the world. They said in 1990, when we got this first global agreement, only 12 countries had national tests aligned with national standards. By 2013, that number had increased to over 100. In America, we call those Common Core. Now, Bill Gates, we've talked quite a bit about Bill Gates. He put $2 billion of his own money into Common Core. And what a lot less people know is that he signed an agreement with UNESCO in 2004 on behalf of Microsoft. The copy of this agreement was obtained by Phyllis Schlafly and posted online. You can read it yourself, where they agreed they were going to create a master syllabus, a master curriculum, global standards, teacher training program so that all the teachers of the world would be brainwashing the kids with the same nonsense. They say in the agreement that Microsoft supports the objectives of UNESCO as stipulated in UNESCO's constitution. And of course, Bill Gates signed this agreement, and then he went on to put $2 billion into Common Core. Now, again, a lot of people have this misunderstanding of Common Core that it's just a nationalization of our education system. It's not. It's so much worse than that. Okay, I want you to watch this ad, propaganda in favor of Common Core, talking about it. Check it out.
Up until now, it's been pretty hard to tell how well kids are competing in school and how well they're going to do when they get out of school. Is a girl in your neighborhood being taught as much as her friend over in the next one? Is a graduating senior in, say, St. Louis as prepared to get a job as the graduate in Shanghai? Well, it turns out the answer to both of these questions is no. Because for years, states have been setting different standards for what students should know and be able to do at each grade level. What we really need are clear goals. That's where the Common Core state standards come in. The standards are consistent from school to school, and they match up against international standards too. Now we know how we're doing compared to just about everyone. So even though local communities will still design their own curriculum, with the same rules, everybody can compete on the same kind of staircase.
Okay, did you catch that? Kids in Shanghai, Paris, Chicago, they're all going to be learning the same thing. Common Core is aligned with international standards. That's them saying it, okay? It's not me telling you, it's them saying it. They are telling you what they are doing. And unfortunately, this has not stopped under the present administration. Betsy DeVos actually went down to the G20 meeting, the Education Ministers Summit, and she signed an international agreement with all these global education czars, Saudi Arabia, Communist China. So we're going to promote the development of curricula which have a strong focus on values and attitudes. It says we're going to provide education that supports better integration of common values like sustainable development. Wait a minute, where have we heard that term before, right? Sustainable development, common values with communist China, right? Forced abortions, population control, re-education camps for Christians and Muslims, chopping organs out of political prisoners and Falun Gong practice. Really? We have common values with them. In Saudi Arabia, right? Chop your head off for being a Christian. We have common values with them? Well, sustainable development, apparently. That's what they said, right? And they also said in this agreement, we commit to facilitating the internationalization of education. So are you starting to get the picture, guys? The brainwashing system masquerading as a public school system has been globalized, is being globalized. Your children are being force-fed propaganda, paving the way for a totalitarian, nightmarish new world order, as these globalist elites call it. And as long as you keep feeding your children to this monster, your children are going to keep serving and promoting this crazy agenda. I'm Alex Newman. You've been watching Behind the Deep State. Thank you for watching. Please make sure you share, YouTube, Facebook, all the big technology companies. They hate us. They're doing everything possible to shadow ban us, prevent you from seeing this material. We depend on people like you to get it out. Now, at the New American Magazine, we've got a special report, Rescuing Our Children. We give the whole history of this monstrosity, the globalization of education. And guess what? We've been talking about this for a long time, right? This is a special report the New American did in 1997. It's called Educating for Global Control, okay? Now, you need to see this stuff. The only way to do it is to get the New American Magazine. We're hoping people all across the United States will share this information, share these magazines, and thank you guys. God bless you, and until next time, take care.
The Letter to the Romans, Chapter 1. Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated unto the gospel of God, which he had promised afore by his prophets in the Holy Scriptures, concerning his Son Jesus Christ our Lord, which was made of the seed of David according to the flesh, and declared to be the Son of God with power, according to the Spirit of holiness, by the resurrection from the dead, by whom we have received grace and apostleship, for obedience to the faith among all nations for his name, among whom are ye also the called of Jesus Christ. To all that be in Rome, beloved of God, called to be saints, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, that your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayers, making request, if by any means now at length I might have a prosperous journey by the will of God to come unto you. For I long to see you, that I may impart unto you some spiritual gift, to the end ye may be established, that is, that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith both of you and me. Now I would not have you ignorant, brethren, that oftentimes I purposed to come unto you, but was let hitherto, that I might have some fruit among you also, even as among other Gentiles. I am debtor, both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So, as much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to every one that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath shown it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed for ever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you will subscribe. And I wanted to point out that this climate change agenda is going to be training and brainwashing people into serving the creation rather than the creator. Seek the truth daily, my friends. The truth will find you seeking.